Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Today, we're talking with an entrepreneur who has his hands in several different industries, including his own podcast called Creating a Brand. We're going to learn what fueled his entrepreneurial spirit and led him to his most recent project to help podcasters across the globe. I'm Tanya Eberhardt, founder of BrandFace. We help business stars differentiate themselves, and we do that through personal branding.
Hey guys, I'm Michael Carr. I'm the COO of BrandFace. I was actually a client of this company before I became a partner, and we're the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe. We do Be Bold podcasts to help people take the fear out of putting themselves out there. We've got a really special guest for you today that will show you how he did it for himself. So we're really excited about this.
Alex Sanfilippo started his first business at the age of 10. He began selling used golf balls in his neighborhood. In his late teens, he launched a technology company that created virtual tours of properties for sale on the MLS and began investing in real estate himself as soon as he turned 18. Then the 2007, 8, 9 recession hit. That's when his dad helped him to get a job at an aerospace company, breaking down boxes and taking out the trash. But hey, he didn't let that get him down. Instead, he found passion in that too and rose to a senior executive position. All those experiences and more we'll learn about next led him to his path of entrepreneurship. Welcome, Alex.
Tanya, Michael, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the warm introduction. That was fantastic.
Pleasure's on our end here. We just love it. Like, we love entrepreneurs.
We do.
And those people who are bold enough to get out there, take advantage of this.
And I have to say, the first time we came into contact with Alex, we loved him too. Yeah. We just love the spirit that he comes at things with, and we love his latest project. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, but we're going to pepper you with some questions today, Alex, so the audience gets to know you a little bit better.
Love it. Sounds great.
Hey, let's pick up from the aerospace company here. Talk about how you went from taking out the trash to becoming a senior executive. And you can even back up a little bit and then taking the job originally. Just tell us a little bit more about that portion of your life.
Sure, Michael. So first off, I took the job because all my eggs were in the real estate basket, which I know you're a real estate guy. I wasn't smart enough to see what was coming. I was 18 years old or 19 years old at that point. No clue what was going on. When the economy wrecked, my father had been in aerospace in that industry for years. I'm like, hey, Dad, like, my industry's wrecked. Like, I'm now super in debt. So I need a job. I'm like, how's aerospace? And he's like, well, it depends on what sector. He goes, the sector I'm in is actually thriving. I'm like, cool. Can you introduce me to somebody that'll give me a job somewhere in that space so I don't run into the same problem? So I didn't give it a lot of thought. I just decided to get into the industry because I'm like, okay, this one crashed. Which one is not going to crash? And can I get into that? And so I just did anything to get my foot in the door, which was a complete change for me. It was like a 180 of what real estate to aerospace. And a quick disclaimer here, I was not an astronaut, I was not a fighter pilot, and I wasn't a skydiver, because everyone assumes I was one of the fun things. I was working behind a computer after I started, everything was behind a computer, other than taking out the trash initially. But when I got into that job, I had always felt like an entrepreneur. I just had some mishaps along the way, obviously, like many of us did. The economy can hurt a lot of things and a lot of people. And when I got into it at first, it was a humbling experience. I mean, Tanya and Michael, like, as you can imagine, right? Like, going from a guy who has my own company, staff, and all that and investments to now being someone who's really in debt, taking a part-time job wherever he could get it, type of thing. And what I did to start applying myself was, after I got over my ego, because that's so important in business. Like, if your ego's involved, I don't think you can really succeed. And if you do, it's few and far between, let's put it that way. But I just put my ego aside and decided to do simple things like look at where trash cans were, which sounds super weird, but I'm like, every day I come to this trash can and it's overflowing. I'm going to put a bigger trash can there. This one's almost always empty. I'm going to put a smaller one there. Oh, we break down boxes in 4 different places. What if I tell everyone to bring it to one spot, and once a day we break down boxes instead of all day just traveling around these different spots in the business? Little things like that, what got me like visible among management of like, wow, this guy's actually like taking this job really seriously. That's usually like a rotating door. People coming in and out of that position all the time. And that's what landed me a full-time position. And I got into shipping, receiving. And obviously there's a lot of gaps between becoming an executive at the company and working my way from there. But that's kind of how I got my start with them.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I can attest to that. What you said about you can't have your ego intact, when you're an entrepreneur. In 2007, I literally lost about half my business overnight. And it was a shock to the core, but then you just kind of reposition, think it through and think, okay, there's a gap here. And so you go for the gap. And I can appreciate that wholeheartedly. So you've launched quite a few entrepreneurial businesses or projects since that time. You want to kind of give us just like a sneak peek of the different things you've been involved in?
Sure. And I'll give this disclaimer to everyone listening. Most of them were failures or just didn't work, fizzled out, right? And if someone's like, oh, wow, that doesn't make him a very credible entrepreneur. I say the opposite. I think it does. Like if you're not trying to do things, you can't succeed without the failures along the way. And I've always been a big Maxwell fan, John C. Maxwell, and he talks about failure more than anything else, which he's one of the most, I think if you open the dictionary, look at the word leadership, I'm pretty sure it's his picture there, right? But most of his writing is about how to fail and how to do so properly. And he talks about how he's failed more times than he could ever possibly succeed. And for me, that's been true in my life. So I've done a lot of things to work my way back into entrepreneurship. So that aerospace job, it was a 15-year career, thoroughly enjoyed it, loved it, got to flex as an entrepreneur because you can be an entrepreneur in a business despite popular belief, right? Like you don't have to have your own LLC or corporation or anything like that. You can actually work in a company. So for many years, I was very content with being there because I was able to kind of flex those muscles. It wasn't until the company went public and got really streamlined and I had to talk to shareholders and it got really structured, which I guess is the goal of any organization or most of them, right? So it wasn't a bad thing. I just could no longer flex. And that's when I decided to start trying all these little projects. So the very first thing I decided to do is because I always enjoyed writing. I wasn't great at it, but I decided to launch a multi-author blog. And I did that. And we actually grew it to about 130 different authors and we were publishing multiple posts every single day. It was all faith-based. So it was around Christianity. For me, like my faith in Jesus has been my foundation. And as I grew that, I just felt really bad about monetizing it for some reason, or something inside me was saying, don't monetize that. And I was kind of like, it was like not to over spiritualize it, but it was like, for me, like a come to Jesus moment of like, well, I'm trying to get out of this corporate job that I'm stuck in. I want to make money, but now I'm feeling like I'm not supposed to. What am I supposed to do with this? So I kind of just made that a ministry for many years. And it was something that grew with a team and things like that. And just kind of grew out of even out of me. Like I couldn't do anything with it anymore. So that was something that initially was like, okay, I'm going to make a lot of money doing this. To no, let's just make it to serve people and to help others. And I end up passing that off. I actually, after this month, I won't have any involvement at all anymore, which is a bittersweet thing because it's still going. There's a lot of people running it, but it's just one of those things that was always like a volunteer passion project. But while I was doing that, I came up with a business idea. I'm like, okay, I can do web design. I understand how this works. I've been on WordPress for a while, so I started a web design agency. And you all do a little bit of that as well, right? Or you guys have people that do things like that, right?
Yeah. We generally farm that out. We can do it, but we like to kind of really stick to our mainstream thing, which is just personal branding. Of course, that's an extension of your personal brand. It's one way to get that brand out there, but we do have people that do it.
So you all were smarter than I was because I didn't realize what comes with making someone a website. And my very first client was really rough. I mean, really rough. I mean, they would not take any suggestions. They wanted it exactly the way they wanted it. Some of the things they wanted, I'm like, I don't know if that's possible on the internet, not for what we quoted you at least, It ended up being what I thought was going to be about a 1 month project, ended up being almost 4. And I think I maybe made some money, but I even had to sub out most of the work because it went way over my head. And I had an almost immediate realization that, man, I don't want to do this. Like after that one client, I think I took on 2 or 3 more. I'm like, I don't enjoy this at all. Like this is not fun for me. I thought that I liked it, but I don't. Like I'm not having fun with it. And that was one of those things where Tanya and Michael, I think that I probably could have been successful with as far as a monetary perspective is concerned, but I didn't get any fulfillment from it. It felt like a job. It really pained me to do it. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna remove this. So I just kind of killed the corporation. I stopped. I obviously finished my commitments. That's something that's really important to me, but I didn't take on any new clients, even though people were like, hey, I've got someone else. I was like, this is not for me. And that was kind of my first big failure where I did have some skin in the game. I had some money in the game. And although I had done really well in that corporate life and I was still in the corporate job, so it was like a side hustle, if you will, I realized that, you know what, not all these skills translate from aerospace into other industries because I just assumed everything I did after that would be a slam dunk. But now it's kind of 0 for 2, right? Sure, the one turned into a really great, like helpful resource, but the other one, I just totally was like, I don't want this. I'm out of here. But those were kind of some of my starting points when I got into entrepreneurship for like a second time in my teen years, obviously, as you alluded to, like I did some entrepreneurial things, but as an adult, these were my first attempts, and those kind of scarred me a little bit. Like those two situations were kind of like, okay, Alex, like maybe I'm supposed to just be in corporate forever. I don't know, but that was kind of some of the steps along the way for me.
That's I really like the way you quantify that. And you know, it's not, and I know you mean it this way. It's not a failure because you've never really stopped. Right. You've continued to take those lessons, and that's, you know, definitely along the Maxwell thought process, right? You're taking those things that, yeah, if somebody was on the outside say, oh, you know, Alex opened up this website thing and now it's not in existence anymore, it failed. Well, no, you made a leadership decision that it wasn't where your heart was. You were never going to be able to overcome the obstacles to make it successful because it wasn't where you were at. That's not where you were led to be. It's not where you're supposed to be. So, hey, let's talk about where you are, where you no doubt feel like you are supposed to be. Tell us about your latest project, which is on your branded shirt, which I love, right. Obviously. Pod Match, you know, where you match podcasters and guests. Genius idea. What inspired this business? And talk to us about that.
Yeah, Michael, real quick to jump back to something you just mentioned that I think is just really important to touch on. Like, yeah, in those moments, I looked at those things as failures, but I can look back now and for the last few years especially, and look at how that helped me. So example, I didn't enjoy the web design stuff, but when I started working with a developer for the first time in aerospace, we were building aircraft parts. Like I wasn't looking at software developers and what they do, but now that I brought in a partner, one of the first things he said to me is like, man, for like a front-facing sales guy, he's like, you sure have a good handle on like how to talk to a developer. And that's because I did the web design stuff. Like I understand some of the lingo. So yeah, it maybe looked like a failure in those days, but now I'm leveraging that to have a really good 50-50 partnership with my friend who's in Podmatch with me. Obviously, we did all the legal stuff, like I say friend, but because we've known each other a long time. But he's just been very impressed with the fact that, wow, this guy can actually do some of the stuff that I've just never had, historically speaking, someone with his skill set be able to do. He's usually like talking a different language, right? But I can roll with it. So that's one of those things that really helped out, having a multi-author blog. I've been able to assemble great teams because I understand how to pull a bunch of people together for a common cause. And doing that, those things have helped me in Podmatch so much. So yeah, like in those days, I was like, man, I'm kind of failing what I'm doing. And now I look back and I am so thankful for those things. And
you were just going to school.
Right, yeah. I mean, and something you just said that really makes sense as well is that I've leveraged those things and they didn't stop me. I would have failed if I was just like, I'm done. Can't do anything on the internet because I ruined a business on the internet, right? Like I can't let it stop me. So for me, it was always, okay, I'll just keep on trying more things. And I think that for all the listeners today, it's so important to never give up. I mean, you can stop something, you can course correct, you can pull back, you can take a break, whatever it is you have to do, but make sure that you think about what you learned in those past experiences, no matter how bad they seem to have failed or how bad they hurt, because you can leverage them in the future. And so when we talk about Podmatch now, like it's been a great success, but I want to make sure people don't think that I'm that guy who just everything I touch turns to gold, because I mentioned a few of those things because it's important to know there was a journey for me like every other successful entrepreneur. And I think so many of us, we want to compare people's, for me, year 10 to day one, right? Someone who's just getting started, like, well, I'm going to build a company just like that. You're probably have to go through some tough stuff along the way. Not saying you will, but most of us, we have got to learn these things before we can get to where we're going. Anyway,
we do. And I have a quick story to share with that.
Yeah.
I have to interrupt because this story is so poignant right now. When I was selling vacuum cleaners door to door, so many years ago, my vacuum cleaner sales guy, vacuum cleaner manager at the time, he was a branch manager and he was the greatest sales manager I've ever had. And he said, when I'd follow up after a call and he said, how did it go? I said, they said no. And he's going, that's awesome. That's one no closer to a yes, because eventually if you keep doing,
true.
It is. If you keep doing something with good intention and your heart's in it, you're not going to continue to get no's, right. And there's never consider experience a failure. The experience is never the failure, right? So and that really changed how I looked at things, which, so my favorite quote from all, famous thought leaders and motivators in the world is, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And that's Dr. Wayne Dyer, my favorite quote. And that's part of what started that mentality in me is, yeah, that's awesome. You're one no closer to a yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love
that's
that.
one failure closer to success, right?
Yes.
I think that's so good. And, you know, it actually reminds me, I was listening to your guys' podcast, and I think it was episode 51, but it had Beate, I think it's how you say her name. Beate, thank you. Sorry, Beate. And she talked about how it's the journey, not the destination. And she talked about how like this journey is just being, this is what leads you and makes you who you need to be for when you arrive at that destination, right? Or get closer to it, if you will. I still consider myself on a journey, but to many entrepreneurs, what I'm doing with Podmatch now, like I have people almost every day be like, dude, you have made it. Like that is the dream for anyone in the entrepreneurship space. And I'm always quick to remain humble and say, yeah, there's been a long journey to get here. And there's been a lot of people that have helped me. It's not me by myself. Because I want to make sure that's known. And I don't want to fall into some prideful state of being like, yeah, I'm great. Look at what I did. Because that's just not the case. There's been so many people, including the two of you, that have helped me along the way in this journey to understand how to become better at what I'm doing. But the whole, I'll jump into, if it's helpful, I'll jump into the story of Podmatch really quick here, how it came to be.
Please.
Yeah, loves it.
So it was a few years ago, actually, I started a podcast. And this was, again, going back on that whole idea of just, what can I do? Let me try something. And I like to write. So I was like, maybe I'd like to talk as well, right? Like, we'll give it a shot. And if anyone goes and tries to find my podcast, please don't go listen to like the first 20 episodes. Just skip those, right? It was a learning process. But for me, I'm like, I'm going to try this in real time. We're just going to throw it out there and see what happens. But don't listen to those first 20. Pass those and keep on going, unless you really want to hear my journey. I feel like I'm a decent show host now. But anyway, when I first got started, I knew nothing about podcasting, similar to how I knew nothing about blogging or creating websites, any of those things. But I realized that this community of podcast hosts were so friendly. I came from a cutthroat industry. I mean, aerospace. The guy sitting next to you is your friend, but he's also going to undercut you if he can. And every other company was even worse, right? They just all came after each other. So when someone's like, ooh, I'll email my whole audience about your new show that just came out, I'm like, how much money do you want? Like, why? You know, like, but that just continued to happen. I'm like, I love this. These are my people, like serving each other, helping each other out. And so I became passionate about this industry. And it was actually March 2020. Believe it or not, there was an in-person conference. I think it was the last one in the world. And I was going to speak at this podcasting conference because I started the speaking circuit and things like that as my show was growing. And I told my wife, I said, when I get off stage, I'm going to ask as many people who line up to talk to me, because if you're a good or bad speaker, people are kind. They're going to line up and say, hey, thanks for talking, right? Like, no matter if you're good or bad. And there's about 2,000 people there. And when I don't know how many people lined up to talk exactly, but I documented that 100 of them said almost the same thing, which was, wow, I'm really having trouble finding ideal guests for my show. And so when I got off stage, that's what I was asking. I'm like, hey, what are you struggling with in podcasting? And that's what I just continuously heard, is I'm having trouble finding those ideal guests. And the key word there was ideal guests, right? We've all got a cousin who owned a business, or that one friend who we can just bring on over and over again until he's like, please leave me alone. That was me initially. But the whole idea was like, okay, can I do something with that? Like, this is an area of passion for me. I'm passionate about podcasting. So I know I'm not going to burn out like I did with web design. Like, now I know I got to be an area of passion. And is there a problem that I can create a solution for? And Podmatch ended up being that solution. When I came home, it was a couple weeks later, I actually ended up whiteboarding the whole thing out, called a business partner. I'll never forget, it was March 10th. I believe it was a Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. Mapped the whole thing out. He had availability. We just signed some partnership agreement. And by March 15th, 2020, we launched into early beta. And the first 100 people who used the platform were the 100 people I talked to at that conference. I said, let me get your contact information. And we just started improving on that process. I mean, it's an MVP. Like, when we started, there was no logo or anything like that. It was just, let's just see if we can solve the problem these people have, and then we'll improve upon that as time goes on.
Yeah, and you have, and continue to do so.
Absolutely.
We love the platform.
Thank you.
Absolutely love it. Yeah.
We do. The first time we saw it, we thought, where has this been?
Yeah.
Nice.
And then when we met you, that really solidified it to us, because, you know, we focus on personal branding. So it's the story behind how this got started and the story behind the human being that started it.
Mhm.
That's truly fascinating, right? And that really just like gets people to want to support you and this awesome platform. So, you know, thank you for everything you brought to this industry.
Thank
for
you.
goodness
No,
sake.
for sure. And continuing what you saw that was attractive to this industry, that we also have remarked about hundreds of times over. Yeah, people are so nice in the podcast space. We all share. Like, it's just like you said, let us get your program out, and you get our program out. And how can we help you with what you're doing? And what value can we bring to your guests? And everybody in the community really desires to do that. And I love it. I think it's fantastic because I also been in industries where, your collaborations are short-lived because the next deal they're going to try to cut you, type of a
right
thing.
I think it comes down to this mindset of abundance, though, is like what it comes down to is like we're in an abundance mindset in general. I mean, obviously I'm generalizing that. There's some people that will bring in a bad mindset, but there's no scarcity mindset in general. Like when it comes to the podcasting culture around the entire industry, it's a mindset of abundance, and you're willing to help people if you feel like there's enough to go around. And thankfully, we're in an industry that just believes that. And so for me, I love being in. Like Podmatch has just been a joy. The people I get to work with, it's been so much fun. We've had a lot of growth, and we just continue to foster that mindset of possibility and there being enough for all of us. So our goal is just to help as many people as we can. If we can't, fine. We're not like, oh, you need us. Like, can't go to our competitors. Like, there's none of that. It's just, hey, like if we can help, great. If we can't, that's fine. We are here if you need someone to help serve you. And that's really been our mindset going into this, and we will continue to maintain that as a company.
And I want to say something about that. I really like that. I want to launch off of that off script because that is how all business should be approached. And I teach my real estate agents that. I'm like, look, yeah, you can listen to the news and we don't have enough to do. You can listen to the news, but I was one of them, and I know hundreds of agents that just made bank money at the worst time in the market, at the lowest point in 2009 when the foreclosures were just hit their peak, like all of that, because all business is really that way. It is our own fear, our own anti-be bold, if you will, that makes us think that we got to scratch and scrounge and fight for this plot of land right here because this is the only place that we can grow a vegetable to eat off of. That's just not true. There is an abundance out there in so many industries, and I would dare say in most of them. Honestly, it's just the way we approach it in our mind, and I think the podcast community has approached it from right off the get-go correctly, as you said, and from that place of abundance. So I like those words that you being the abundant life broker. I really that's right. I'm tired to look at all things that way, So I love it.
I do too. So give us a little bit more detail on Podmatch. And you also have an extension of Podmatch, a new product on the side that kind of helps people keep up with their scheduling of podcasts and kind of like a CRM for podcasters. Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So first off, Podmatch, the whole idea, we developed it off of a dating app, which is funny. Tanya and Michael, you both know this because we've talked before, but I've been married too long to be on any dating apps. Like they didn't exist when I got married. And because they're fairly new, like I've been married for 9 years, so it's not like I've been married for my whole life or anything like that. But that's long enough there was no apps. But when we had the idea, I'm like, man, what if we just built something like a dating app? Like why reinvent the wheel? Someone's done this in another industry. Can we just make something similar to what they're doing? So I asked all of my single friends, hey, what's your favorite dating app? And half of them, which I'm thankful I have good friends, they called me. They're like, hey, bro, what's wrong? Like, why do you need a dating app? Like, what do you need to date? Like, everything okay, man? So, which was great. I'm glad I have friends that check on me and they're not just like, here. Come to find out you need like a real profile. So I just asked a couple friends, I'm like, hey, next time you're using your dating app, can I just watch you and take notes? So like I started just sitting next to friends as they're playing, like scrolling through ladies at that point, like, and watch what they're doing and be like, okay, why that? What do you not like? What do you like? And the whole idea was, can we just make it like that? So the whole thing is it'll automatically match you with people that it thinks are a good fit. So if you're a podcast host who's looking for a guest, then it'll automatically connect based off what you're interested in. So imagine you're a host that only interviews authors, maybe just fiction authors, and you are a fiction writer. Then it's going to say, okay, you two might be a good fit. From there, you can match right within the platform, and you can actually message back and forth before you do anything. You can schedule it right there. The whole idea is to kind of be a one-stop shop, and the profiles, because this is what was I think really was missing in podcasting, was you can see all about the audience. You can see all about what the person talks about, like the bio that you went through, although you did it beautifully. You pulled those piece of information from my podcast. You didn't have to ask me 10 questions to make that. It was already there. Approved media, all that stuff is there. The idea is, can we make this really simple and easy, and you can know that it truly is a good match before you make that commitment. And that was the whole idea behind it. And like, as I mentioned, we are just continuously improving that process now. We're making sure it continues to be the solution that people are looking for. And we just want to continue to expand upon that, make it better and better. And of course, faster, because people love fast websites, and doing it that way. So that's kind of, in a gist, that's Podmatch there. I don't think I missed anything. I don't know, Tanya or Michael, if you guys felt like I missed anything there.
No, I think it's
we've
really
used
concise.
We've
Cool.
used it, and we have done quite a few. We've had quite a few matches on both sides.
Yeah,
Right.
And it's worked seamlessly. It has been fantastic. And we follow your recommendations when you have a guest on, or when you are on someone's, you go on and you leave a review. And that really does help others to understand, the type of guest, or, some special things about them.
Mhm.
So I love the platform, Alex. I think
Thank you. And you all go over and above on that, by the way. I want to mention this because I had you guys on one of the segments of my show, and you all sent me a really nice gift thanking me for having you on my show, which, like, no one's ever done that before. So I want to say that you guys are doing a really good job, like, leading with value. You guys added so much value to the community. People still talk about what we were discussing today. People were still talking about it. And I have a great gift sitting here to remind me. So I'm very thankful to you guys for being on the platform and just the value that you all bring. I wish that everyone was just like you guys, but you all do some really fantastic work. So glad you're part of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to take this moment to kind of give a sneak peek announcement here of a collaborative effort that we're working with you on, actually. And that is a webinar series, a 2-part webinar series, where we're going to be talking about how to brand yourself as both a podcast guest and a podcast host, and how to take, those personal branding elements, how to set yourself apart from all the other guests and all the other hosts, because there's a lot of opportunities and options out there. And then actually getting yourself ready for the Podmatch platform and making sure that you shine on that platform. And Alex is going to be pitching in, teaching you how best to use the platform, the best practices. We're going to be chiming in with some tips and advice on how to set your brand up properly so that you shine. So I thank you for being open to that collaboration.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think this is a good time to also mention that if somebody's listening to this, I mean, this is Be Bold branding, right? If someone's listening to this and like, ooh, I don't want to be on a podcast, or I don't want to start a podcast. If you don't want to start one, please don't start one, because it's a lot of work, but you should be on them. If you have a story to tell and it can add value to somebody, it takes a little bit of boldness. The first time I got on this side of the mic, I actually thought it was scarier because I didn't know what questions were coming. Like, I was like, what if they asked me something about one of my businesses that failed? What am I going to say? Do I have to lie about it? Those are the thoughts. Those are thoughts going through my head, right? The truth. That's the best thing you can do. It's what makes you human. But if someone's listening and they're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do this, I think that you've got to touch base with Tanya and Michael to find out how to set yourself up for it, because you'll feel a lot better if you're positioned properly. I was really nervous because I did no setup. I was just kind of like, I'll show up. I don't know my brand. Like, I need some self-discovery here. But if you have that, it makes it a lot easier. But I'm telling you, people do business with who they know, like, and trust. It's hard to develop that through social media, but really easy. If someone's listened to you for 45 minutes, share your story transparently in a way that adds value to them. That's a side note that I had to throw in there because I felt like it was a good place to do that, Tanya. So thank you.
Oh, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
See, everybody's getting to know you a little bit more, and we are too, at the same time. So okay. So what's next for you, Alex?
Yeah, so you referenced podcast SOP. The SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedures. So going back to the way I've decided to do businesses, because my own ideas don't seem to work, right? So I decided, I'm always going to find that area of passion. I'm going to find a problem, offer a solution for that problem. So for me, podcast SOP was just the next way to do that. My area of passion is now Podmatch members. So I just continue. Anytime I got the opportunity to ask any of them that are using it, hey, what else are you struggling with? I continuously heard, oh, it's really stressful to podcast, which that doesn't really tell me anything. But if you dive into that, you can find out why. So I started just asking, well, why is it stressful? Oh, I just feel like I've always got a million things going on. And like, I've got notepads everywhere. I've got sticky notes all over the place. And after a while hearing that, thankfully, it finally clicked. I'm like, well, we need like a CRM. And I was like, well, there's tons of CRMs. I'm like, hey, go try Trello or go try Asana or all these different things. The problem I was realizing is many people who start podcasts don't have experience in those. And if they're already feeling overwhelmed, don't get me wrong, Asana, Monday.com, all these, they are fantastic at what they do. But when you log in for the first time, it says, here is the 2,000 things our platform can do. And you're already feeling overwhelmed. You go delete. I don't want whatever that is, right? So came up with a simpler solution. I'm like, you know what if we could just help people, only help them release episodes? We do nothing other than that. And that's what podcast SOP is. It literally builds it. You build your own, but you build or use one of our predetermined templates. You template out what you do for each episode, who it's assigned to. If you have a team, you can upload, you can comment, you can set due dates for everything. And you just, anytime you're doing a new episode, you hit add new episode, put the estimated release date in there, and it'll populate the rest for you. And so we sought out to help people be less stressed in podcasting, and it's exactly what it seems to be solving. It's very early on, but we've got hundreds of people using it. We're getting really cool feedback from it. But again, it all goes back to finding a problem that people have that I care about and offering a solution to that problem. That's what we've done with this as well.
And it gives you one less place you have to log in too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Simplify.
There's 2 points to that I want to encourage any podcasters and people that are going to be doing that to really look into that. The first one is being in real estate business. There's a CRM, there's a million of them, right? And like you said, they're all good. Like I don't think there's a bad one. Like they're all good if they fit your need. I've been through about 10 in the
man.
And I kept hearing the same complaint. It's too overwhelming. Too many buttons. Too many icons. Too many. So I had one designed that had 4, and they still wouldn't use it. So now, whenever my real estate agents ask me like, what CRM should we use? I'm like, Excel. And they just look at me like, because that's what I was like. Finally, I'm like, if there's too many buttons, we're just going to go to Excel right here, and we're going to just take care of the people on that list. How about that?
Right. That's a good call. Very smart. That's wisdom right there, Michael. That's wisdom.
Exactly. You got to just bear it. We got to boil that thing down.
It's earned wisdom.
4 buttons is way too much. But no, the CRMs are like that. They tend to be like that. And for you, to apply that same wisdom of, hey, this trash can is always full. We need a bigger trash can. This one's never. Well, let's do a smaller trash can. And using that same thought process, to loop this back to where we started and applying that wisdom that experience has taught you is everything. And applying that to that SOP to say, we're just going to focus on this. And we're going to tell you how to do this. And being in the podcast industry and space that we've been in, and being guests and being hosts, it's always surprised us. Sometimes people can have like these massive downloads every month, and you're sitting there and you're supposed to be on their show at 3, and it's 3:15, and they haven't sent the link yet.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we're like, well, did we miss something? Oh, no, I forgot to send the link. You know what I mean? It's okay. We'll start shooting it right now. It blew our minds, because a lot of
we're punctual, by the way.
Yeah,
I know. The way I got the link to this, I got my automatic reminders. I always appreciate it. But you're right. Like a lot of people in podcasting, I had to learn this. Like even people that are really successful in it, they'll even admit they're like, I don't really know how to be organized. People like literally say like, I'm not really sure how to do all that. And I've just come to have a grace for it. But you're right. Like, because you see the show and you're like, wow, they must have a machine behind this. And half the time, not trying to be mean, but they don't. They're just making it up as they go along, which I have a lot of respect for. Like, talking about being bold, just going for it. So I try to have a lot of grace with it. But I've noticed that same thing where I'm like, am I, because I'm very punctual. I'm like, am I late? Did I do something wrong? Like, what's going on here? And, oh, nope, I fell asleep. I'm like, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. What do you mean you fell asleep?
Well, maybe you can help straighten some of them up.
You're definitely Podmatch is definitely going to help with that.
That's right.
For a lot of people, which is just really, again, complimenting you on such a job well done of trying to make that concise and help the industry along a lot, and probably as much as anything that I've seen in the time that we've been in that space. So,
well, thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah. So let me ask you, how can prospects reach you if they have questions? What's the best way for them to get in touch with Alex?
Yeah. So everything I do personally is at creatingabrand.com, which is the name of my podcast as well. But you can find all my social links. There's ways to email me. You can find me there. That's very simple for people to go to. So just creatingabrand.com. And then we've talked about Podmatch a lot, but Tanya and Michael you guys actually have a link that'll allow people to sign up for free. So I would encourage people to actually contact you instead, or you can put it in the show notes or whatever. That way they can they can get, if they're interested, they can get into it for free. And that's something that you guys can help them with. So I'll leave that up to you, but that's what I'm doing. I'm doing Podmatch, and I'm doing my Creating a Brand podcast, and everything I do can be found at those places. But honestly, I love this show. I love what it stands for. When we talk about fearlessly and boldly starting a business and growing it, that's a topic that's just so needed, because fear, I think, is got to be, if it's not the top thing, it's one of the top things that holds just so many people back from actually achieving their dreams and goals that they have for themselves. So I just want to say thank you to both of you for what you all do with this show. It's been great for me to listen to, and because you can never forget it, right? Like it's easy to sometimes slip back into fear and things like that, or not being bold. So I just really appreciate what you two are doing here.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that. And I say fail as fast as you can.
Right.
That's right. Fail forward.
Fail forward, forward and fast.
So good.
Every no is one no closer to a yes.
Yep.
And we've
right.
all been through that. So it's it again for the listeners, just consider it a voice of experience and never stop. So.
That's true. That's true. Well, Alex, thank you so much for being on the show. We are honored and looking forward to our collaboration with you in the very near future.
Absolutely.
Definitely can't wait. Tanya, Michael, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. You
Yes.
bet. Okay, guys, if you have questions about your brand and want to learn more about us or Podmatch, we're going to put both links in the comments area for you. But you can head to discussyourbrand.com and schedule a free session with us. And let's talk about how we get your brand moving forward, especially as a podcaster.
Yep. All right, folks, listen, it's about prosperity. That's why we do Be Bold podcast. And when we say prosperity, we're not just talking about money. That's an important part of it, but it's definitely not all of it. We're looking for that a perfect 360 of an abundant life that we truly wish for every one of you. We know here at BrandFace that prosperity favors the bold. So we say be bold, folks, especially with your brand, especially in 2021, especially in 2022 coming up here before you know it. Thank you, Ms. Tanya, and thank you, Mr. Alex.
Thank you, gentlemen. And we will see you next time on Be Bold Branding. Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.